Hello there, welcome to a special edition of Planet America's Fireside Chat. I'm John Barron.
And I'm a special edition of Chaz Licciardello. The first Biden-Trump debate of 2024 is done and dusted, so I guess let's get dusty.
It was very dusty indeed. Joe Biden, he apparently had a head cold. But the problem for Joe Biden was he looked like a very, very old, feeble man with a head cold. Have you ever seen a worse debate performance than that?
No, I haven't. Okay, and as for the head cold, the fact they didn't mention it before the debate, they mentioned it after the debate, that says a lot, I think. Expectations
for Joe Biden had been set very, very low by Donald Trump.
On that note,
yes,
the good news for Joe Biden, and there isn't much good news, but the good news for him is now there's absolutely no doubt he does not take performance-enhancing drugs.
Yes, he probably should have. We don't know what he was taking, but look, there are a lot of... I mean, the entire debate was not good for Joe Biden, but there is one moment that will define this debate, possibly this election, and the next 4 years in the United States and indeed the world. I don't think it's possible to overstate...
I think you're trying to.
I don't think it's possible to overstate. This could in fact be the equivalent in political terms of when Lyndon Johnson was almost beaten in the New Hampshire primary by Senator Eugene McCarthy and dropped out of the presidential race as a result in 1968. He realised he couldn't win. That wasn't because of a gaffe, it was because of just an accumulation of political pressure and poor polling. If the polls tank next week for Joe Biden, as they very may well, then there's going to be tremendous pressure on him to go. Yeah. No,
I can't believe I'm even contemplating that he could go, because I've been the loudest voice saying that is insane when people say that. But it's hard to explain just how bad. It's not just that he was terrible, but he was terrible in exactly the way he could least afford to be terrible, in that he seemed so old. He didn't complete sentences.
Yeah.
Any sentences. Like, literally. Honestly, it's not an exaggeration to say he only completed maybe a tenth of the sentences he began.
Sometimes he got away with it, but this is the moment. Let's show you now.
Let's show him.
Because this came less than 10 minutes into the debate, and it really felt like the knockout blow. Have a look for yourself.
Making sure that we continue to strengthen our healthcare system, making sure that we're able to make every single solitary person eligible for what I've been able to do with the COVID. With dealing with everything we have to do with. Look, if we finally beat Medicare.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump?
Well, he's right. He did beat Medicare. He beat it to death, and he's destroying Medicare because all of these people are coming in. They're putting them on Medicare. They're putting them on Social Security. They're going to destroy Social Security. This man is going to single-handedly destroy Social Security. These millions and millions of people coming in, they're trying to put them on Social Security.
That actually summarised the whole debate.
Yeah.
Have Biden be confused, not make much sense. Trump turn it immediately into migration, which he ended almost every answer with migration. And then Trump makes some wild claim, like suggesting that the migrants are going to be responsible for the end of Social Security, which makes no sense because they pay into the Social Security system but don't take out of the Social Security system. If anything, they help the Social Security system, and it not get called by Biden.
Right.
Biden let Trump go on endless, outrageous claims that a competent debater would have called him on. Trump said so many really dumb things that Biden called them on almost none of them, so they seemed sensible. There was no fact-checking, so he got away with it.
Right, and that was important as well, because for weeks we've been talking about how the format of this debate was going to affect the debate. And we know that 4 years ago it was a free-for-all. Trump interrupted Biden over 100 times, and Trump looked bad in doing so, and Biden was just able to come in with the occasional zinger of, won't you shut up, man? Well, this time, effectively, Joe Biden was not interrupted. He was given enough rope, and he hung himself. The moderator wasn't saving him there. That was the elapsing of his time for that answer. But the fact that he just had a brain fade after months and months and months of Trump saying, this guy's shot, this guy can't finish a sentence. Well, he literally couldn't finish that sentence. And you're right, it was the most egregious example, but there were plenty of other examples where this was, I cannot think of a worse debate performance. Later in the show, we're going to be talking to Liz Mair, who worked with Rick Perry at the time that he famously couldn't remember the government departments that he was going to abolish as president, and he ended up famously saying, "Oops, I can't remember it." This was worse than that. In 50 years from now, shows like ours, possibly this show, you never know, is still going to be playing that clip, I believe.
Yeah, I think like we've talked before about how debates are often about the moment that you take out, because not everyone watches debate. Especially this debate was not an interesting debate. A lot of people would have just switched off, right? And so it's about the moment. And it's not like there was one moment that was much worse than all the other moments. It was just a relentless 90 minutes of Joe Biden not being up to it. And Trump, by the way, was not good. Trump was not answering questions at all. He was wandering all over the place. He had fluency issues as well, but he seemed like Cicero compared to Joe Biden.
He was subdued, and as Joe Biden is fond of saying, "Don't compare me to the Almighty, compare me to the alternative." Well, that worked for Trump tonight.
Totally.
Look at the alternative. Made Donald Trump look measured, in command of the facts, strong in his debate performance. He looked like a president. Joe Biden looked like a superannuant who didn't know the way to the buffet.
Yeah, and I'll tell you where Trump really did well. Like, even though I don't think his debate was particularly good, where he did very well was in his command of body language. At all times, he seemed presidential. At all times. Joe Biden was throwing bait at him. Like, he was talking about the porn star, he was talking about sexual assaults. He was trying to get under his skin. The whole time, when he was talking about that, Trump just shrugged. Like, the whole time he had that demeanour, as you say, presidentiality. He knew what he was doing. The split screen was on, and he looked great. Biden, on the split screen, looked haunted. He looked like he was, it's just the way he looked, but he looked like he was actually reflecting on the fact what's gone wrong. He was like this. It was a terrible, terrible body language.
All of the optics were bad for Biden, and Biden has been doing mock debates apparently for the last week. They must have been pretty bad too, because my goodness, he really failed to deliver. What about did Trump capitalise on Biden's brain fade and generally terrible performance? Did he have to, or was it just self-evident?
Well, this is the other thing. Like, most of the time, he didn't even try. Like, I think he was just extremely comfortable. And when he's comfortable, he's happy to just roll with it. And so he would just concentrate on just acting presidential. And I think generally he did. But there was one or two times when he went for it. And to be honest, I think it worked even when he went for it. There was one particular moment, which I'm sure going to become possibly the viral moment of this debate, when he was very open about where Biden was at.
When he was president, he was separating babies from their mothers, putting them in cages, making sure the families were separated. That's not the right way to go. What I've done since I've changed the law, what's happened? I've changed it in a way that now you're in a situation where there are 40% fewer people coming across the border illegally. That's better than when he left office. And I'm going to continue to move until we get the total ban on the total initiative relative to what we can do with more Border Patrol and more asylum officers.
President Trump?
I really don't know what he said at the end of that sentence. I don't think he knows what he said either.
Brutal.
Yeah, and look, that was far from Biden's least fluent moment. But I think for those who watched the debate, that criticism stuck.
Joe Biden had possibly one good moment in the debate. He saved it for almost the absolute end, where possibly that debate prep did pay off. He proved that he could complete a sentence. Is it going to be enough, do you think? Because, you know, tens of millions of people will have watched this debate, but the Biden campaign will be pushing these videos out and negative videos about Donald Trump, trying to distort perceptions.
Well, look, as someone who was going to be making a show about this afterwards, I was looking for moments from Biden and from Trump that we could play. And so I was looking for a good moment for Biden. And it took until the end of the debate for that
90 minutes in.
Yeah, like quite literally. I was looking for it the whole time. And I was like, oh, thank God, at least we can play one clip. Let's play that clip.
Best of a bad lot. Take a look.
When you lost the first time, you continued, you appealed and appealed to courts all across the country. Not one single court in America said any of your claims had any merit, state or local, none. But you continue to provoke this lie about somehow there's all this misrepresentation, all this stealing. There is no evidence of that at all. And I tell you what, I doubt whether you'll accept it because you're such a whiner. The idea, if you lose again, you accepting anything, you can't stand the loss. Something snapped in you when you lost the last time.
So that was fluent.
Called him a whiner a couple of times, and it got a facial response from Trump that we're kind of used to. He pulled a face there. It's in a lot of memes. He resisted that for most of this debate. Trump acted. He was so unlike the Trump of 2016 against Hillary Clinton, 2020 against Joe Biden. This was a different Donald Trump, and whether it was the debate format, the fact that he wasn't able to interrupt, that he didn't have a crowd there egging him on, or maybe he's a little older, if not wiser. But either way, this was a solid performance from Trump and a terrible performance from Biden.
Yeah, well, like I said, I don't think Trump debated terribly well, but I think it was good enough. And the fact there was no one there to call him out on it, it ended up being an excellent performance. Yeah. But it's a better debater, I think, could have made a mess of Trump. But he didn't. He wasn't facing a better debater. He was facing Biden. And
the moderators played a pretty low-key role in all of this. Jake Tapper and Dana Bash, both of CNN. They did not get into a squabble with Trump, which I think was a danger. They also didn't try and fact-check Donald Trump. They didn't try... they tried a few times to try and get him to answer the question. They would ask him a question. He would give a non-answer. He would address something else. And then they would go back to him and ask him again, and he might address the answer the second time, knowing that he got twice the airtime if he did.
And also, it's Joe Biden's job to call him out. There were some classic moments. For instance, they asked him about whether there should be a Palestinian nation. And his response was, we'll see. And then he just started about NATO. Now, someone else would have called him out about that, but Biden didn't. There was another moment when it was Trump's absolute weakest spot when it comes to immigration, which is what he wants to talk about, is so are you going to deport families? Are you going to deport people with jobs?
You boast about deporting 11 million people.
Yeah.
There are lots of children amongst that.
And they asked him about that, and he completely ignored that question. He just criminals. Biden should have called them out on that. He didn't. And the format, as you say, the format relied on Biden to do that. The other thing about the format not helping Biden, I think, in a way that was unpredictable, I didn't see this coming, but in hindsight makes sense, is Biden relies on a crowd more than Trump does, and I'll tell you why. Trump likes a crowd, but Biden relies on a crowd because when he can't finish a sentence, if he just pulls a face or something or shrugs or whatever, he can get a laugh, he can get the crowd to make a noise.
Exactly.
But the silence filled the gaps of when Biden didn't finish sentences, which made it so much more obvious, I think.
Well, just how big of a disaster was this for Joe Biden and Democrats? Let's get another opinion on this. Joining us now from the United States is former US Senator Heidi Heitkamp from the great state of North Dakota. Heidi Heitkamp, not a great debate night for your guy, Joe Biden.
Well, I mean, it's so interesting because I had such high expectations for Joe, and he just seemed tired and not really up to the task. And he had one job, to basically convince the public that he was ready to be president 4 more years. And, as much as I love him, I don't think he met that task. I don't think he met that bar.
Heidi, what do you think was the takeaway message from Joe Biden after that debate, if anything?
I honestly think that tonight, the debate performance was that bad that people are really seriously considering replacing him on the ticket at the convention, which I honestly think will lead to a lot of enthusiasm and a lot of dialogue in Chicago. So in some ways, it's like we are an unprecedented time, and let's see how the dice roll. I mean, honestly.
Heidi, right now, this feels, and this is not to make light of the age issue, it does almost feel like trying to get Dad to give up the car keys when he can no longer drive the car. How do you have that conversation with Joe Biden when he's President of the United States? Who has that conversation with him?
Well, there's been a lot of discussion over the last year exactly about that. Like, okay, he is an elderly man, and there's all the reassurances. He's got it. we're okay. And tonight, the whole Democratic apparatus, honestly, is thinking, maybe we need to rethink that. And hopefully the president, who I love dearly, who is a wonderful man, who's done great things, will actually have that same, I think, moment of clarity, like, am I up to this task? And the stakes are so high, not just for the United States of America, but they're high for you guys, they're high for Europe. I mean, and what's amazing to me is how Donald Trump was able to present himself as presidential tonight, and not just because he was playing against Joe Biden, but he was given the opportunity to be pithy, to be short, and to talk about his vision. And so all the theory about Donald Trump as this rogue, crazy guy was like dissipated tonight. And I think this is really, really dangerous for the world. I think it's dangerous for the United States. And I hopefully think there's going to be a lot of clarity after all of this come tomorrow.
So you think, Heidi, that it wasn't just that Biden did badly, but Trump actually did very well tonight?
Yeah, I mean, everybody's going to talk about Biden like he had the sore throat and he sounded like, not very clear. There wasn't a lot of clarity in his answers. But I will tell you, I know Donald Trump, and I watched him tonight, and the Donald Trump of 20 years ago showed up tonight, and people were like, "Oh yeah, he's okay. What are we worried about?" I mean, people are going to talk about Biden and his performance, but the bottom line is, right now, what I look at is Trump's performance. He didn't scare anyone tonight.
Heidi, when the conversations are being had, as they are already happening amongst Democrats, is there an alternative to President Biden? What does that look like before the convention in August? What do you think that could look like? I mean, if we're talking about a serious illness rather than a very bad night and doubts about the future, the 25th Amendment could be invoked. He could be removed from office and Kamala Harris becomes president and presumably the presumptive nominee.
Well, I don't think that's going to happen. I think we only have, 4 months, 5 months until the election. So I'm not worried about the 25th Amendment. I think Joe Biden is totally capable of running this country for the next period of time until the election. So I don't think that's a deal in any way, shape, or form. But I think the question is, who do you want to fly the banner for the Democratic Party? Who should you, and we know across the country, and you guys know this, that whether you're looking at Europe, incumbents are not doing well across the country. And so now there's an opportunity for people to have a conversation about, should the Democratic Party have a replacement candidate? And I'm a little selfish because when you look at it, by God, this is like a drama. This is like a made-for-TV television show. If you're actually going to talk about replacing him, is it going to be Gavin Newsom? Is it going to be J.D. Pritzker? Is it going to be Gretchen Whitmer? Who would step in those shoes? And I think there's going to be a lot of discussion after tonight about who that person might be.
Heidi, there'll be hardened professionals watching you and watching lots of other people tonight and saying, typical Democrats, wetting the bed like they always do. The election's 4 or 5 months away. In a month's time, everyone will forget this even happened. There'll be some other drama. Let's just swallow hard and just move on and get over it. Nothing is going to kill the Democrats more than division and undermining Biden by talking about how badly he went. How would you respond to that?
what I would say is, did you watch the debate? did you watch what went on? And so all of those people who have been accused of bedwetters, of being bedwetters, you know, I always say there's two kinds of Democrats, the bedwetters and the breath holders. Like we all, like, how is he going to do? And tonight the bedwetters won. I understand the raspy voice and all of that, but any time you're on a debate kind of stage and Donald Trump looks presidential, you've got to reevaluate what you're doing.
Final question from me, Heidi. When those discussions about possible replacements for Joe Biden as the nominee of the Democratic Party this year happen, what will the calculation be based on? Will they be looking at approval polls? Will they be looking at the key issues? Will they be thinking, well, who's best to prosecute the concerns that many Americans have about abortion restrictions? Is it going to come down to a personality? What are the factors?
It's going to come down to who has that stage presence, the charisma to actually carry the banner forward. I mean, everybody in the Democratic Party has the exact same policy positions. The question is, who do you want on the stage next in the next debate with Donald Trump? And, you know, Gavin Newsom has been absolutely, you know, kind of stellar in his evaluation and his presentation. There's tons of really, really good Democrats who could carry this banner. And so, I mean, it's sad that we're talking about this, but you know, honestly, Joe Biden had a chance tonight to convince the American public that he could lead our country. Not sure he did it.
Senator Heidi Heitkamp, we really appreciate you coming on the show on not such a good night. It's easy to come out on the good nights. Thank you for being with us tonight.
You guys are great. I love you guys.
Wow.
That was a lot more forthcoming than I expected that even Heidi Heitkamp would be with us.
That was candid.
Very much. And bear in mind, Heidi Heitkamp is a friend of Joe Biden's.
An actual
Heidi
personal
Heitkamp,
friend.
Personal friend. She was sworn in as senator by then Vice President Joe Biden. She would not be saying to us or anyone openly that the party will be looking for alternatives if she did not seriously believe that. That is a huge call, a big bit of news, I think.
Yeah, it's huge news. I'm still just processing in my head whether it's even possible. Like, it's a kind of thing that sounds real easy for pundits to throw around. Oh yeah, just replace them.
Yep.
But there's just so many practical reasons. Like, for instance, all the money belongs to Harris and Biden. If it's anyone other than Harris, they have no money. They're starting from zero. Right. So like, there's so many practical reasons why this should not be possible to even consider replacing Joe Biden.
I don't think money will be the issue. If they need to find $1 billion from Bloomberg or Pritzker or somebody else, they will find the money to do it. But I also can't see the Democratic Party saying, we have a woman of colour who is the Vice President of the United States. We're going to go for the middle-aged white guy in California instead, or the Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer instead. I can't see that happening.
I agree with you, but this is part of the problem. That if you, I'm not even talking about like from a Kamala hating perspective here. There is this peculiar hatred of Kamala Harris out there, which I mean, like, I don't think she's great, but I don't think she's Satan like you'd think from some of the commentary out there about her. But there is a problem, which is how much bounce do you, how much benefit do you get from replacing Biden with a member of his administration? All the stink on him, other than age, rubs off on Kamala Harris.
Yeah, well, that'll be the argument that Gavin Newsom and Gretchen Whitmer's or JB Pritzker's people are going to be making. The first post-debate poll has come out. Voters watching on CNN, Trump 67% say that he won, Biden 33% say that he won. So not a total disaster. I don't know who that 33% was.
I'm surprised.
They
are
the most partisan Democrats of all.
I just want to make a point on this. Like, because there'll be people who are watching this who are saying we're going over the top. People who watched the debate and said, look, Trump said lots of stuff which was patently ridiculous, and Biden wasn't that bad, and all the rest.
Not true.
That's not true. But I would just say this: just think about the people who are tuning in for the first time. because that is what this debate was for. It wasn't for you who watches Planet America. It wasn't for people who've been living this for the last 4 years or 8 years or whatever. It's for the people who have switched off, who are now switching on. Okay, election campaign starting. Let's have a look at our candidates. They don't know all the ins and outs. They don't know the shortcuts and the phrases and the stats. They haven't heard them before.
Yeah.
They would have understood almost nothing that Joe Biden said tonight. Because he began thoughts and didn't finish them. I knew what he was trying to say. And the points he was trying to make were often fine. But he didn't say them. And that's a killer.
I don't know if this is a saving grace for Biden, but I don't think any of those low propensity, undecided voters, I don't think they were watching this debate. There's a reason why presidential debates usually happen in late September and through October. It's that 6-7 week stretch up to election day where the undecided voters, the non-hyper partisans, do tune in, do watch the debates. So maybe this was taking out the trash. Maybe this is a sense of get this out of the way and then spend $1 billion on advertising telling people that Joe Biden isn't as shot as he appeared in that debate. Maybe people will change their minds. We have seen historically bad first debates haven't mattered. Ronald Reagan had a bad first debate against Walter Mondale in '84 and he won 49 states. Mitt Romney had a great first debate against Barack Obama in 2012. He got a bump in the polls, but the bump faded and Obama won. So maybe they're going to console themselves with this, but look at the polls next week. I'd be astonished if there isn't a significant swing. 5% either way is a significant swing these days. It might be two or 3 points. But this is a very, very serious challenge for the Democratic Party now.
Look, I'm not disputing that, but just to argue from the other side, because I still can't wrap my head around the possibility of actually replacing him. To argue from the other side, from a Democrat's point of view, they would say, look, Joe Biden came from 2 points down. He was 2 points down in January. It's taken all year for him to just get in the lead. But you can do it again in 4 months. Maybe don't have that second debate, or make sure he's better
It'll
prepared.
look like he's hiding if he doesn't do that debate.
I know. But in terms of what you're risking by just tipping the table, you're risking the House, because right now the Democrats are on track to win the House.
The Democratic Party makes their own rules when it comes to their presidential nominee. They've made rules, and under the current rules, they had no primary. There is no mechanism to have a new candidate. They can change those rules. 1968 is the last example where Hubert Humphrey did not stand in a single primary. He was the Vice President of the United States under Lyndon Johnson. Lyndon Johnson pulls out. Kennedy and McCarthy challenge him. McCarthy pulls out. Kennedy is shot. Hubert Humphrey becomes the nominee at the convention. It didn't end well, of course. There were riots in the street, fistfights on the floor of the convention, and Richard Nixon was elected that November.
I'm glad you pointed that out.
But it can be done, and they will be now thinking, as Heidi made the point, I think an excellent point, there's an anti-incumbent sentiment across the world at the moment. Discontent with inflation and the post-COVID economy that most people are trying to endure. And you need to have a non-incumbent. Now, Donald Trump is able to be the outsider, the non-incumbent again, as he was in 2016, saying everything's terrible now, it was great under me, people have got short memories. They now have to start thinking, well, we need a new Obama. We need a Democrat version of Trump. We need somebody who is charismatic and new and no record and no involvement in this economy.
Well, we've just established the replacement kind of needs to be Kamala Harris. She's the incumbent.
She is the incumbent, but, she hasn't been running economic policy. She hasn't been running immigration policy. In a sense, we don't really know what she's been doing, except she's been prosecuting the case for abortion rights, and abortion rights could make the difference. And if people of colour and women come out in numbers for Democrats, then they win.
And we also, just devil's advocate, we also just should remember, we know how American politics works. We know in 3 weeks' time or a month's time, we're going to be talking about something else. I'm not saying we'll forget the debate ever happened, but I'm just saying, how fast American politics moves. There's going to be another story.
That's right. 4 years ago, we were talking about the train wreck of the first debate, and we thought, well, that's huge. And then, of course, 2 days later, Trump admitted he had COVID. He had COVID at that first debate, we now know. But that changed the narrative once again. You're absolutely right. But this was Joe Biden's Achilles heel.
It was.
And all of the claims that Trump has been making, which we have thought and most people have thought were overblown, well, it turns out that was a brilliant strategy because Biden looked to be exactly the caricature that Trump has made him into.
And the point Heidi Heitkamp made, which was the perfect point, she's so right, is not only did it play into Biden's weaknesses, it removed Trump's weaknesses.
Yeah.
He didn't play into type. He wasn't crazy. He wasn't dangerous. He didn't appear like a threat to democracy. He appeared presidential.
Yeah.
So it reinforced the exact thing Biden didn't want reinforced, and it undermined the stuff which Biden did want reinforced with Trump.
Yeah. Well, for another perspective on this, joining us now is Liz Mair. She's a Republican political consultant. She headed the RNC's online communications back during the McCain-Obama election of 2008. She's since worked on presidential campaigns, including Rick Perry, and Scott Walker. Liz, you saw that. We heard from Heidi Heitkamp. This is a five-alarm fire for them. They're talking Gavin Newsom or Gretchen Whitmer right now. Was it as bad as all that?
Yes, it was. And it has been for about a year. And it's astonishing to me that it's taken this long for senior Democrats to see this and be in a position to do anything about it. I will also say, while we're at it, though, that sure, that was really bad for Biden. It was a really bad debate for Biden. It was also a really bad debate for Trump. If you think about what these guys looked like and sounded like when they were going after each other in 2020 debates, holy crap, have both of them mentally declined so much. I mean, it is really unreal. And I don't understand anybody who thinks that it's remotely responsible to let either of these people within about a mile of the White House. I really don't. So it is that bad.
So when you say that's how bad you thought Trump was as well, you're talking about fluency there, because he seemed, in terms of character, he seemed to be quite calm and quite serene almost on stage.
Yeah, he didn't do a nutty. He didn't do angry Trump. You saw certain flashes of it. Those were not great. Those are obviously the things that are going to piss off independent voters more. And so he did a better job of containing himself. But I mean, the only reason that Donald Trump sounded remotely fluid getting through that debate is because he basically just kept going back to the same three things he always harps on about and has frankly been harping on about since like 1982, right? That's not tough. The second that he's asked to answer a question that doesn't deal with those things and he can't find a way to pivot to it, this is where he gets asked about climate change. And instead of saying CO2, he starts talking about H2O. That's not a good debate performance. That's just better than the other guy. But considering that the other guy probably performed less well than, I don't know, your average 2-year-old who might be put on the stage, I mean, it's such a low bar to clear. Sure, I mean, I'm sure Trump will be perceived by many people as the winner of that debate. And yeah, I think he did a little bit better than Biden. But right now, my perspective on this, I am terrified for my country. This is bad. If they don't find a way of replacing one of these guys, I certainly hope we're not looking at another 4 years with these. I certainly hope that somehow somebody gets elected, does like 2 days in office and stands down in favor of whoever the vice president is. But neither of these guys is remotely up to the task. It was really bad all ways round.
Liz, what worried you more? Was it that moment? It was reminiscent. You worked once upon a time for Texas Governor Rick Perry when he famously had that oops moment where he drew a blank. Yep. Nobody talked about his age then. They just thought the guy was not too bright. This is all about Biden's age.
Well, also he was on a lot of back pain medication. My recollection is because I think he just had back surgery, right?
For sure.
But yeah, I mean, but you say was it reminiscent? Yeah, I actually turned to my mother in the middle of the debate and said, these guys are doing about as well as Rick Perry was when he was on back pain meds and he couldn't remember the third department. But Rick Perry had like a very good pharmaceutically based explanation for that. In addition to probably, yes, he probably isn't as bright as many other politicians, right? I mean, I love the guy, but I think we can all recognize that that's probably true, right? He wasn't Barack Obama. He wasn't Mitt Romney. That's just not like the sort of intellectual level he was operating at. But these guys, I mean, these guys made their way through a 90-minute debate, essentially with the level of competency and fluency as somebody who's completely high on opioids.
Leaving aside the fluency for a second, Trump tried to end pretty much every answer with migration. Like whatever he was talking about, it turned into migration halfway through. Do you think he successfully made this election about migration?
Well, I think this election is already to a much larger extent than what people would have predicted. It is about that. But I think now, I don't think that that's going to make it about migration. I still think fundamentally, when you look at reams and reams of polling data, what you find is this is about the question of age. Voters don't like either of their age, but they do see Biden as older and more infirm. They do. The other thing that it is about, very much, particularly for independent voters just hate Biden on the economy. They just hate him. So for them, I'm sure that the migration stuff factors into a certain extent. Crisis at the border, chaos at the border factors into a certain extent. But fundamentally, what we're dealing with here is what's supposed to be your swing vote being completely outraged and frustrated about cost of living crisis and blaming the incumbent. Yeah, at the end of the day, I do think this election is still going to be about the basic kitchen table issues that have to do with cost of living. What are you paying at the grocery store? What are you paying when you put petrol in your car? These kinds of things. And yeah, I do think that Democrats should have swapped him out a long time ago. And I think tonight a lot of them are panicking and scrambling.
Liz, you're obviously a campaign professional. You know your way around the campaign. Now, if this was a movie, they would replace Biden with someone or other who would swamp in, and it'd be a great movie, I'm sure. But in reality, if they did swap out Biden, is that less of a risk for the Democrats, or would that be disaster?
Yes, I believe it is less of a risk, and it still could very well be a disaster. But yes, I do believe it would be less of a risk, because at the end of the day, you get rid of that number one negative that is constantly causing him problems in every single poll, and that is the age issue, right? In addition, yes, possibly some of the blame that has been placed on him with regard to cost of living issues may be transferable just based on the party label. But you put in somebody, I think probably realistically, the only two people that you could do this with are probably Gavin Newsom or J.B. Pritzker of Illinois, because Gavin Newsom has an enormous fundraising base, can immediately get the money in, looks good on TV, can present, all of these sorts of things. J.B. Pritzker is independently extremely wealthy, so he could finance quite a lot of this himself. I don't think Gretchen Whitmer's an option, although probably I'd prefer her to the others. But, either of those options, I think at this point is going to be preferable. At the end of the day, they can at least theoretically say, well, it wasn't on my watch. And at the end of the day, you put one of them, pair them up against Trump, then you're going to see Trump, who is the guy who's pushing 80, which is part of what I saw tonight, having watched these guys debate a lot, thinking all the way back to 2016. You remember what Trump was like in 2016? This is so far gone from that. He is so far gone from that. And being better than Biden, it is such a low bar to clear. It's unreal. I really do despair of where the country's headed with either one of them, to be perfectly honest with you.
Strange days indeed, Liz Mair. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us.
Yes, thank you.
For those wondering what kind of Republican strategist would be this negative about the Republican nominee, Liz Mair's working with Rishi Sunak at the moment, so she's quite depressed.
Yeah, exactly so. Now, look, let's go to the Planet America archive now. And a little reminder for you now that optics and appearances in presidential debates and how devastating they can be for one candidate, whether it's factually correct or not, well, it's nothing new. Take a look.
Landing a man. Cavalry.
It's Monday, the 26th of September, 1960. In 43 days, American voters will elect their 35th president. It will be either Republican Vice President Richard Nixon or Democratic Senator John F. Kennedy. And on this night, at the CBS studio in Chicago, before an estimated audience of 70 million, the two men are about to take part in the first ever televised debate between presidential nominees. At 43, Kennedy is one of the youngest men ever to run for the White House. And despite 8 years as deputy to President Eisenhower, Nixon is still just 47.
The candidates need no introduction. The Republican candidate, Vice President Richard M. Nixon.
There's a story behind Nixon's taut expression and rather sickly pallor. He's in pain.
A very important campaign issue.
Weeks earlier, he'd been hospitalised after injuring his left knee getting out of a limousine. It triggered septic arthritis, and arriving at the debate studio, he'd banged the same knee on another car door.
Okay, right at the camera here.
The producer of the debate, Don Hewitt, greeted the candidates together and asked if they'd like makeup. Kennedy said no. So did Nixon. But in their separate dressing rooms, Kennedy's advisors convinced him to get made up. Nixon's staff could only get him to apply a powder designed to cover up a 5 o'clock shadow called lazy shave. It was a bad move. Under the hot studio lights, as Nixon began to sweat, the powder turned to sludge.
I have no comment. The next question.
Nixon wore a drab grey suit that got lost in the background. His shirt collar ill-fitting after his weight loss in hospital. Longer shots revealed his left leg raised in discomfort. The combined effect was sweaty, shifty and awkward. Kennedy's advance team had looked at the studio set the day before and selected a dark suit and tie to stand out and a blue shirt to cut down on glare.
I'm not satisfied until every American enjoys his full constitutional rights.
For many Americans, it was the first time they'd seen Jack Kennedy, and he looked like a movie star.
I don't want the talents of any American to go to waste.
His healthy glow helped by weeks of campaigning in open-top convertibles. Yet John F. Kennedy was also a very sick man. His campaign denied it, but Kennedy had been diagnosed with Addison's disease of the adrenal gland, which had nearly killed him and discoloured his skin, giving the appearance of a tan. His thyroidal eyes bulging slightly, as he also endured constant pain from a spinal injury suffered playing football at college and aggravated during the Second World War. He'd again nearly died during one of the many surgeries to try and fix his back, and he wore a brace to support his spine. Kennedy was also heavily medicated on steroids, opioids, testosterone, tranquilizers and amphetamines. But none of that was apparent on this night in Chicago in 1960.
Only you can decide what you want this country to be, what you want to do with the future. I think we're ready to move.
Polls of television viewers showed Kennedy was the clear debate winner. A poll of people who only listened on the radio gave the debate to Nixon. It's a fact that's often put down to Kennedy's appearance and the power of television, although it probably had as much to do with the poll being of older people who still listened to radio in 1960 being more conservative and comfortable with Nixon.
My congratulations to Senator Kennedy for his fine race in this campaign, and to all of you.
The outstanding personality of the year, John Kennedy, is elected to America's greatest political office.
Kennedy, of course, would go on to win the election on November the 8th, but 3 years later, he would be dead.
Two priests who were with President Kennedy say he is dead.
Again, riding in a convertible in Dallas, the back brace propping him up after the first non-fatal shot instead of allowing him to slump to the floor, giving his assassin a clear second shot, which ended President Kennedy's life.
Wow.
What a week, Chaz.
Oh, God.
That is all the time we have for this special presidential debate fireside chat. Wednesday's Planet America is on a 2-week show break. We choose the best times to take time off, don't we?
Yeah, we might be coming back.
Who knows who's going to be even president next week. We will definitely be back in time for the Republican convention in 2 weeks' time from now. And we have got another fireside chat coming up as well.
That's right, when former President Trump is due to be sentenced after his New York hush money and fraud conviction. Also, keep an eye out for Planet Extra Pep podcast, because we never sleep. See you there.
Bye-bye.